Hi, I'm Michael Jacobs with Erica Larkin, and welcome to Essential Golf. Chipping out of the rough, not an easy shot, Erica, and people really need to lower their scores around the greens. It's the quickest way to lower your handicap. So, chipping out of the rough and some common faults. What do you see, Erica, when you're out there?
I think golfers have a tough time really reading their lie. You can have a lie in the rough where the ball is sitting up high in the grass, and it can seem easy to hit the ball out, or if it's really sitting up, it's easy to go right underneath it. So you have to really pay attention to how high or how low the ball is sitting in the rough. If it's sitting down very low, it's usually pretty evident that that's the case. The ball is going to have a lot of grass kind of sticking up and trapped around the sides of it. And in that case, you also have to make some adjustments to get the ball out cleanly. So really pay attention to reading your lie and then adjusting accordingly. So let's talk about if the ball is sitting up high in the rough, what you should do. You want to have a little bit more of a shallow type swing or approach. So therefore, you don't want to go underneath it. So I would suggest taking a narrow stance and really keeping the swing more shallow or low, working low to the ground so that you can hit the ball cleanly and not go underneath it so much. However, opposite to that, when the ball is sitting down in the rough and you really have a down lie, you need two things. You need loft, and you absolutely need a little angle to get the club into the grass and on the ball cleanly. So I would suggest using a more lofted wedge and then setting up with a slightly wider stance, lowering the handle to add some loft, and then even using a little bit of wrist hinge to get the club working up and down into the grass just behind the ball, almost like you're cutting into it. And in that way, you're going to be able to launch the ball out of the rough a little bit more cleanly. So let's take a look at how that would look. Lowering the handle, adding some loft via club selection, or even opening the face a little bit, and then popping the ball out like so. If you have a higher lofted wedge, the ball is probably going to come out a little higher, or if you're using something like a pitching wedge, you might find that it comes out with more of a medium trajectory, but it'll come out cleanly and you won't just duff it or chili dip it or run it onto the green unexpectedly.
So I think the first step is the common mistakes that people make is they don't assess their lie well enough. And it was great what Erica shared there is like, for example, there's a certain set of standards with a typical full swing, but when you get into the short game, you have to be much more creative. It's much more of a subjective environment. Like how she described when the ball was sitting up, effectively the ground was higher, so she had to change her attack angle from versus when it was sitting down in the grass. And then when you look at that shot in the grass, it was clear to see that your club is going to hit some grass before the ball, so it almost becomes like a grass type bunker shot. Right. So the way that it's going to behave on the green is going to be different from when you can make clean contact. So I think a common mistake, aside from assessing the lie, is the expectation of the result. You might have a lie like that second one, and getting close to the pin might be almost impossible. And what great players will do is they'll accept that situation, make sure they make good contact, and instead of trying to get it a foot from the hole, they'll understand that they'll have 5 or 6 feet left coming back, and they'll save their mental focus for that putt, just execute the chip, and then, get ready to sink the putt. What the everyday players do when they make mistakes is they'll be so upset that they left themselves with 6 or 7 feet. Meanwhile, that was about as good as they can do. By the time they get to the putt, it's just like a knock it in or knock it close, and they get frustrated.
I think taking practice swings is really important to try to get a feel of what your lie might feel like before you hit it, because a thick down lie is going to feel a little different. It's going to feel heavier than when the ball's sitting up, and you're going to have two different senses of how much power or size swing you'll need or want to give it on those different lies. So if all of a sudden you're just so caught up in trying to hit the ball out of a thick lie, you don't take enough of a size swing to get it to go anywhere, you're going to come up short. And so you have to be always willing to adjust on the fly and try to trust your instincts and practice these different kinds of lies to get a little bit of experience in judging what it's going to take to get the ball to go the distance that you need. When the ball comes out of these different lies, it's going to react differently. The shallower swing is going to produce more forward roll, and the ball will release out and roll more. A thicker lie and kind of cutting into the grass should produce a little bit more spin. The ball is going to come out, but it's going to check up when it lands potentially. And so you have to plan ahead. So picture the entire shot, get a feel for what the lie is going to feel like for you as you're swinging, and try to adjust accordingly to what you need to do to make your best shot happen. It's not easy, but with practice you can do better.
And just not enough time is spent in this area. I don't think people practice it at all. And then they're out on the course and they expect to get a result like they see on TV. More time needs to be spent in this particular area when you're practicing. And final, two common mistakes I often see is people will stand too wide. They'll take like a regular setup and then they make that low point of contact almost impossible. And then there's a misnomer that you have to severely play the ball super back in your stance and kind of just pick the club up and pop it down. And people have taken what might help on certain little shots and taken it to this extreme to where pretty soon they're like this and they're trying to hit a shot and it just becomes, you know, a tough situation. So I think you have to assess your lie, understand these mistakes, understand what you should do, and I think you'll start to hit better chip shots.
Last comment for myself, I agree with Mike about people setting up with the ball position too far back for all their shots. It's almost like they use this one-size-fits-all mentality. You have to play different techniques from different lies and be willing to adjust. And playing the ball back in the stance presents the leading edge, which is good and bad. It de-lofts the face and it creates more of a cutting-in effect, but at the same time, it's not going to create the spin that we're looking for to launch the ball out higher of the rough. And on the fairway, that can also be a problem because off soft fairway, if you present too much of the leading edge and all this shaft lean, you can start to dig and take divots that you didn't want to take and hit heavy shots unexpectedly. So really be careful and understand what these different elements do. Don't get too extreme either way. I wouldn't want too much forward press, and I certainly don't need you to lay the club so far open that it creates another set of problems. So let's find some happy mediums. Let's experiment with our setup and how much shaft lean we really need. Let's be fairly neutral and again, feel and experiment with different ways the club can come into the grass so that you have options.
Use these ideas, and I think chipping out of the rough and avoiding those common mistakes will be in your favor.